Hanoka is your typical high school student who's pretty sure he'll never get a girlfriend, since he's not cool, rich, or smart. But one day, his life flips completely upside down when he discovers a world of magic and monsters, not because of Truck-kun this time, but thanks to the most popular girl at school. Turns out, being friends with the principal comes with extra perks, and somehow, that includes dating his daughter, Ayaka. Hanoka's only weird trait is that he rides the same bus as Ayaka and sits right next to her in class. Even though they sit side by side, they've never said a word to each other, and it feels like they live in totally different worlds. Everyone gathers around her like hungry ducks, while he's basically invisible. One day, he drops his eraser by accident and Ayaka picks it up for him, and we all know how her fan club reacts to that. They drag him out of class, shove him down, and beat him like he's some random background character, warning him not to ever make their princess lift a finger for him again. After getting beat up like a mop, he heads to the teacher's office to help out since it's his turn for day duty. But then, a girl walks up and takes the stack of papers from his hands. You might think this is where some sweet romance begins, but no, she's just one of Ayaka's followers, and she wants Hanoka far away from her because Ayaka is on day duty too. So just like always, Hanoka ends up playing the background in Ayaka's story. After school, he heads out to take the trash and starts thinking about how boring his life is. That's when he notices a sketchy bunny toy in the garbage and pulls it out to check it out. On its belly is a message that says, "Today's weather will be clear, but some school buildings might fall." He thinks it's just a dumb joke from some fourth grader, but then he sees a huge shadow forming and looks up to see the school's clock tower collapsing on him. He wonders if this is when he'll finally get ice-guided to some fantasy world full of cute girls, and sighs about how he never even held a girl's hand. The tower crashes down on him, and that should be the end of season 1 of Witchcraft Works. Or so he thinks until he wakes up in the arms of Ayaka, who's dressed in some kind of witch costume. He freaks out like the wimp he is, but Ayaka tells him to hold still, or he'll fall. He's confused until he looks down and sees they're floating in mid-air on a broomstick. In the distance, a cat-eared girl sees them and wonders if Ayaka is a workshop witch, then snaps her fingers and sends 2 giant rabbit-shaped toy soldiers to attack. Ayaka throws Hanoka up into the air, jumps away from the strike, and blasts them with fire magic before landing smoothly and catching Hanoka like a princess, giving him a full close-up of heaven. The rabbit toy soldiers get back up and charge at them with their swords, but Ayaka blasts them with fireballs, then fights up close using her broom and magic. She tells Hanoka to stay near her, but he does the exact opposite like the fool he is, and turns around to see a cat-eared girl behind a building waving him over, saying it's safe. He assumes she's a friend of Ayaka's and runs to her, only to get surrounded by more rabbit soldiers who grab his arms and force him to kneel. One of the soldiers walks over with an axe, and they all get ready to make him the next nearly headless Nick for a Harry Potter remake. He wonders if this is just a dream, but then Ayaka jumps in, sets all the soldiers on fire, and saves him like the real main character she should be. Hanoka still thinks he's dreaming and starts complimenting her, saying she even looks amazing in his dreams and there's no way she'd ever care about him, let alone save him like some Sailor Moon Harry Potter combo. She tells him it's her duty, and even if he's confused, he doesn't need to worry because she'll protect him. He asks why, and she says it's because he's her princess. Did Hanoka just get confirmed as a girl? Hanoka asks himself the same thing and starts questioning if he's even a boy. But Ayaka reminds him that this anime isn't set in 2023. And there are still only 2 genders for now. She tells him to let her handle things, but he notices her hair is slightly burned and worries that he caused it. He asks why she took the hit for him and blames himself for being dumb and falling for a trick even after she warned him to stay close. He says her burned hair is his fault and a gift from above, but then stops, realizing he's actually just being a total simp. After years of being bullied by her fanboys, he's now turned into one of them without even knowing. While he sits there feeling ashamed, he spots one of the toy soldiers getting back up to attack her from behind. Remembering what Sasuke did on the Naruto Bridge arc, he jumps in front of her and takes the hit instead. He thinks he'll look cool saying his body moved on its own, but he faints before he can even speak. Ayaka kneels next to him and gives him a gentle hug, and yes, there's a reason I said gentle hug instead of just hug. Seeing Hanoka get hurt makes Ayaka furious, and she says she should have burned all of them to ashes from the start. She stands tall and casts her strongest spell, Million Clover, wiping out the enemies with a huge blast of fire magic. Later that day, Hanoka wakes up in Ayaka's private room at school. She tells him it wasn't a dream, and she'll explain things later, but for now, they should head home. So, they walk out together, and Ayaka says for now, all he needs to know is that it's her job to protect him because he's her master. He's not sure what that even means, but just walks beside her quietly and they don't talk for a while. A few days later, everything seems back to normal, but this time, instead of being invisible, Hanoka starts getting jealous stares and angry looks when Ayaka chooses to sit next to him on the morning bus to school. After that, they walk to class together, and Hanoka feels like staying beside her any longer will get him killed. He fakes a stomachache and rushes outside, but ends up running into the bully Sint gang. They grab his collar and tell him to stay in his lane, and decide it's time for another beating until Ayaka shows up and tells them to back off. She ties his necktie into a bow and then warns everyone that she'll burn anyone who tries to lay a finger on him again. Later that day, at lunch, she sits with Hanoka and a bunch of girls from her fan club. She feeds him using her own hands and says she made the lunch herself. Hanoka enjoys the moment but feels uncomfortable being surrounded by 20 girls who clearly don't want him there. Thinking he's ruining the mood, he stands up and says he'll go eat somewhere else, then runs away. Seeing this, Ayaka gets upset and lights everyone's lunch on fire while staring at the ground. Meanwhile, Hanoka feels guilty for being rude and walks through the courtyard where the building fell on him. He notices everything looks normal again, like nothing ever happened. Then, he turns and sees the cat-eared girl standing beside him. She tells him the falling building was just an illusion, and then says she's finally sure that he's a clueless loser for coming alone without realizing anything. She steps closer while changing into her witch outfit and says her name is Tanpopo, from the Tower Witches. She says she's here to kidnap his dumb self and calls out her soldiers. But before anything happens, Ayaka appears and grabs Hanoka. Tanpopo says she was waiting for her to show up, then commands her army of toy soldiers to attack. This time it's more than just a few soldiers. They rush Ayaka from every direction with swords and spears. After the battle, Hanoka wakes up on the ground and sees Ayaka shielding him, full of wounds he can't even count. She asks if he's okay, and he wonders how she's still alive. Feeling useless, he tells her he believes in her, but thinks he should call an ambulance. Ayaka says if he really wants to make it up to her, he should promise not to run away during lunch tomorrow. He agrees, then freaks out that she's bleeding everywhere. But she explains she's made of fire and it's fine. She tells him to close his eyes and stay still, then uses her magic to blow the soldiers away. She turns every soldier into ash, then walks up to Tanpopo while holding Hanoka like a princess. She tells Tanpopo she's about to toast her furry tail and blasts her with a big fire spell. Tanpopo barely escapes by calling in more soldiers and running off with her butt still smoking. After that, Ayaka tells Hanoka to open his eyes, and he's shocked to see everything looking normal again, clean with no damage in sight. Then they head home and end the day. The next morning, 5 new students transfer into their school, and guess what, it's Tanpopo and her gang of Tower Witches. A few days go by, and Hanoka keeps asking Ayaka to explain what's going on with all this magic and why Tanpopo keeps coming after him. One morning, he decides to keep asking until she finally answers, but notices she didn't ride the bus with him that day. He gets off at school, changes his shoes, and heads to class only to find Ayaka having a heated moment with the new transfer students. He looks up at the classroom sign and realizes he's not in his actual class, he's in the Torture Society Club. Instead of asking why a club like that even exists, he just asks Ayaka how he ended up here when he was sure he went to his real class. Ayaka explains that she put a spell on him so he'd walk here without knowing, just so they could meet. Then she turns back to the tied-up girls and says this is a witch hunt. She says she decided to deal with them because they might be dangerous to him. He's not sure if that's true and stares at the girls struggling. He asks her to at least take the gags off their mouths so they can talk, and Ayaka agrees. She says she was going to finish them quickly, but one of them ran away, so she used the rest as bait to draw her out. Hanoka walks over to Tanpopo and asks why they're all after him. Tanpopo laughs and says it's no surprise that Miss Perfect didn't tell him anything, and to be blunt, she wants his body and the white stuff inside it. Hearing that, Hanoka turns red, not sure if he heard her right, but Ayaka tells him not to believe everything their enemies say. Tanpopo grins and says they might be too relaxed since their last teammate still isn't caught. Suddenly, black slimy goo starts dripping from the ceiling and covers both of them. From inside the slime, May shows up and frees her friends. She grabs Hanoka and phases through the floor, escaping to the room below and leaving the others to fight Ayaka. She starts celebrating her lucky break and thinks she's pulled off something big, forgetting that she's just a side character meant for comic relief, not the main villain. A second later, Ayaka blasts through the floor and looks down at her with all 4 witches already defeated. She drops into the room and walks toward May, but May warns her to stop or she'll let her pet wolf bite Hanoka's neck. Yeah, what's with all these witches and necks? Ayaka tells Hanoka not to worry and says she'll roast May in seconds. She keeps walking forward. Mei stands up, holding Hanoka hostage, and orders her pet to bite his neck to prove she's serious. Instead of stopping, Ayaka sets Mei on fire and kicks her away, letting Hanoka go free. Shockingly, his neck is totally fine instead. The bite mark is on Ayaka's neck. Mei realizes this and quickly escapes, letting her friends retreat too. Later that day, Hanoka wakes up in Ayaka's private schoolroom and notices she's wearing a scarf, even though it's the middle of summer. She apologizes to him and says she really wanted him to have a peaceful, normal life, but if things keep going this way, the Tower Witches will keep targeting him. She says the only way to end it is to fight back and find the one behind it all, but the problem is, she still doesn't know who it is. Hearing this, Hanoka thinks hard and realizes it's his fault she got hurt and now hides the injury with her scarf. He tells her to explain everything and asks her to make him her apprentice. He doesn't want her to fight alone anymore. Meanwhile, in a dessert and coffee cafe, the school's headmistress, who also happens to be Ayaka's mom, Kazane, meets with her old rival and villain, Cronnoir, after a small break of about 130 years. Cronnoir says she heard that Medusa's students started trouble with Kazane's group, and maybe now she wants to jump into the fun too. Later that weekend, Hanoka gets a call from Ayaka asking him to meet her outside. He thinks it might be a date, but really, she just wants to tell him the truth about witches like he asked. She says they'll go to school, but they'll stop at a food place on the way. As they walk, Ayaka tells him a story about witches and explains that in their world, there are two kinds of witches: workshop witches and tower witches. Workshop witches protect people. They set up workshops in cities and places where people live. Their job is to make sure no one uses magic in evil ways, and they build these workshops in different places and live there, so that's why they're called workshop witches. But tower witches don't follow any rules. They only care about themselves and use magic however they want, even if it hurts people. She warns Hanoka that if the tower witches ever got him, the world could end and everyone might die. Then they stop at the food shop and take a break. After ordering, a waitress comes over and starts talking to Ayaka in a super squeaky voice. Ayaka keeps staring at her with an angry look, but listens as she talks about how Cronnoir is in town and that more tower witches are showing up too. Hanoka realizes the girl is actually the student council vice president at their school, and she's a workshop witch just like Ayaka. Once Ayaka finishes her drink, they head to the shopping mall and buy clothes. While waiting for her to shop, Hanoka sees a cute girl helping a lost kid and walks over. The girl stares at him, pulls out a notebook, and confirms he's the same guy from her photos. She then kicks the lost kid aside like an NPC and jumps at Hanoka with a sword, revealing she's a tower witch. Her friends show up behind her and attack Ayaka. Ayaka blasts them with fire and jumps in to save her precious princess boy. One of the tower witches pulls out a gun and uses what she calls gun no jutsu, firing right at them. Ayaka responds with bulletproof cape mode, Batman style, and blocks every shot. Then she pulls off a move like Ace's fire gun and totally scorches them. After that, she walks over with Hanoka in her arms and lets the witches run off like they're in some spy movie. Once they're done at the mall, they keep walking to school. Hanoka apologizes for dragging her into all this chaos. He asks if it'd be safer to just lock him up or seal him away somewhere, but she tells him not to worry about things like that, she'll always protect him. Then she says he better start studying hard, because being her apprentice won't be a walk in the park. Hearing that, Hanoka gets excited and says he's ready to grow stronger. Soon, they reach the school, and Ayaka reveals that the school is actually one of the workshops. She brings him to the headmistress's office to meet her mom, Kazane. Kazane scolds Ayaka for wrecking stuff at the mall and asks what kind of workshop witch breaks other people's things. She tells Hanoka it's tradition for workshop witches to introduce their apprentices to their master on day one, and that's why she made Ayaka bring him. The next day, Ayaka takes Hanoka out to train, but on their way, they get ambushed by Tampopo and her Team Rocket knockoff. Kana wonders if it's smart to fight Ayaka, since she's nearly impossible to beat, but Tampopo says they'll go with rapid stream formation, which basically means charging in like cavemen with no plan. Ayaka tells Hanoka to pay attention, and then sends the Goofy squad flying through the air like Team Rocket in Pokemon. Of course, Hanoka learns absolutely nothing from watching this. After that, they head back to school, and when Hanoka opens his locker, he's hit by a wave of hate letters and death threats. Someone even threw in a dead voodoo doll that looks like him. Ayaka says it must be the work of her fanboys and tells him not to worry, they won't try to hurt him anymore. Even so, he can feel the angry stares all around him because he gets to sit next to her, study with her for tests, pair up with her in gym class, and even walk to and from school with the girl they all dream about. After school, Hanoka gets ready to do some magic training, but Ayaka walks with him to the bus stop and says she knows he's tired, so they'll take a break today. They get on the bus and ride home, but along the way, Ayaka spots a weird flying magical fish outside the window and checks the bus display. It's changed from the next stop to dead end. She jumps up and turns around to find Cronwar sitting in the back row. The bus is now completely empty, the driver is gone, and it's moving forward only using her magic. She tells Hanoka to stay calm, then turns to face Cronwar, who steps forward and introduces herself. Ayaka gets ready to launch a fire attack, but Cronwar freezes her with a spell called Dictatorship. She casts a powerful spell on Ayaka, but just as expected, it leaves her without even a scratch. Hanoka doesn't understand how strong Ayaka really is, so he foolishly jumps in front of her to protect her. Cronwar laughs at how dumb that is and says no matter how hard anyone tries, Ayaka can't be hurt. Then, she calmly walks over and stabs Hanoka right in the stomach. He drops to his knees, crying in pain, but she tells him to quit pretending and stand up already. Hanoka's confused, but then notices it actually doesn't hurt, and he's not even bleeding. Just then, Ayaka collapses to the floor, and he sees that she's bleeding from the same spot he was stabbed. Cronwar explains that it's because of a special ability called damage transfer, which means any harm meant for him goes straight to her instead, as long as they're close. She continues by saying the reason Ayaka has that ability is because she made a contract with him. That contract lets her use the special power inside of him to become an unbeatable witch, but in return, she must protect him from every danger. Then she says that if he really wants to save her, all he has to do is give her more power using the white stuff inside him, and no, it's not what you're thinking. She's talking about a spirit inside him, like the nine-tailed fox in Naruto. She hands him a glowing candy and tells him to eat it if he wants to unlock his true power. She tries to force-feed it to him, but Ayaka isn't about to let some tiny weirdo steal her pet's first kiss, so she fires off a blast of green flames that knocks Cronwar back. Yes, it all works thanks to pure plot armor. Then Ayaka tells Hanoka that she's going to change into something different for a while. She takes some of his power and turns into the hottest fire queen ever. With glowing green flames and dragon powers, she quickly overpowers Cronwar and stabs through her shield and her throat. But even after that, Cronwar escapes and leaves them behind at the bus stop. Hanoka wakes up first and sees that Ayaka's wound is gone, but she's still not opening her eyes. He takes her to the hospital, and the nurse says she's just really tired and will wake up soon. Later, when he gets back home, he finds a small wrapped candy in his pocket. It's the magical orb Cronwar tried to feed him. He decides to keep it a secret from Ayaka and hides it in his drawer, in case he ever really needs it. He also starts thinking about what Cronwar said about Ayaka's contract with him, and if that means she already knew him before they even met at school. The next day, Ayaka reserves the entire gym just for their training session. She gives Hanoka his very own witch trainee uniform and starts explaining what it does. She tells him to try jumping, so he gives it a shot. To his surprise, he feels super light and jumps almost all the way to the gym's ceiling. On his way down, Ayaka catches him princess style and then tells him to try holding her the same way. Hanoka picks her up and notices she's really light, and she explains that the robe they're wearing makes their body feel almost weightless. Next, she raises her right hand and twists her wrist slightly, and a magical broom appears in her hand. She tells him that the broom is hidden in the cape and can be summoned with that hand gesture. Hanoka gives it a try, but instead of summoning a broom, he just summons disappointment because nothing shows up. Just then, Ayaka's alarm goes off, and she says their time is up. Suddenly, tons of students open the doors and walk into the gym for practice. Hanoka panics and tells her they should hide before someone sees them wearing these total otaku-looking outfits. But to his surprise, no one seems to notice them at all. He wonders if he's become so invisible that people don't even see him anymore. Ayaka explains it's actually because of the robes they have a special charm that makes people ignore them, and others naturally avoid walking into them too. After that, she asks if he's scared of heights and then grabs him and flies up into the sky on her broom. She says they'll keep flying until he learns how to summon his broom. She explains that workshop witches usually fly around like this to check for trouble in their area. She also adds that at any time, there are 5 powerful witches patrolling their school to keep it safe from danger. After flying for a while long enough for a nap, Ayaka starts heading back toward the school. But Hanoka points down and tells her to stop. He sees a kid getting bullied and robbed and says they need to help. Ayaka tells him that's a police matter, not a witch one. Witches are supposed to stop evil witches, not get involved in normal people's problems. Plus, they're not supposed to reveal their existence to anyone. Hanoka doesn't like that rule and finally summons his broom, diving off into action. He almost ends the series by crashing headfirst, but barely pulls it off. He slams into the bullies like a car wreck and knocks them down. They get up, gang up on him, and prepare to beat him down until Ayaka shows up and roasts them all to a crisp with her magic. Honoka reminds her that they're not supposed to attack regular people, but she says those guys were witches too, which is how they were able to see him even with the magic robe on. Turns out, the girl being robbed is friends with Honoka's little sister, Kasumi, and she isn't a witch, so she didn't notice any of the magic stuff. Meanwhile, in the city of Rothenburg, Medusa is being kept under the highest security possible, but somehow, she manages to break the seal and escapes from prison. The first people she decides to visit, none other than her lovely students team Tanpopo Rocket. But before she can find them, we see Tanpopo and her squad sitting at a restaurant, brainstorming a plan to capture Honoka and finally defeat Ayaka. It's not easy. Ayaka is basically unstoppable, and Honoka seems to give off some kind of magical charm that keeps her stuck to him like a loyal pet. As they talk, Rin suggests a new idea. Instead of going after Ayaka, they should wait until Honoka is alone and then grab him. The team agrees to this new approach. Just as they're about to leave, Cranoir shows up and says she'd love to join in on their little plan. The next morning, Honoka wakes up, heads downstairs, and gets ready for school. His sister, Kasumi, says good morning and helps fix his messy bedhead with a comb and hairdryer. While she's doing that, she casually asks him about the phone call he got from a girl last weekend. Honoka definitely doesn't want to admit that the most popular girl in school calls him Master, so he makes up a lie and says it was just a class call system. The girl's number was before his, and she called to say Monday would be a fun day. Kasumi raises an eyebrow and asks why he ran out of the house right after that call. Honoka starts sweating. He throws together another weak excuse, but she catches on and warns him she could blast his hair off with the dryer on full power. Then she says she knows he was out with Ayaka, and that she hears stuff around school too. She even gets picked on because her brother is taking up all the princess time. She straight up asks what kind of relationship he has with her. Honoka tries to figure out what to say, but just then their mom, Kamachi, calls them for breakfast, and Kasumi lets him off the hook, though she warns she'll continue this convo in his room later that night. Meanwhile, Ayaka is already waiting at the bus stop when she's ambushed by 3 witches from Tanpopo's crew. After breakfast, Honoka suddenly remembers he was supposed to meet her early and sprints to the stop. On his way, he gets tripped by a trap set by Tanpopo and her toy rabbit soldiers. They pin him down, and she tells him that while he's lying there, her friends are busy beating Ayaka to a pulp because now they know her weakness. Turns out, Cranoir spilled the secret. Ayaka loses her invincibility if she's separated from Honoka. Right then, 2 of the soldiers get launched into the sky by a massive leg. Tanpopo looks up and sees a giant bear plushie toying with her soldiers like action figures. And yep, it's Kasumi's doing. Turns out, she's actually a workshop witch too. Tanpopo gets furious that her plan is falling apart and brings out a giant rabbit soldier. Starting a showdown of giants, bear versus bunny begins. At first, it looks like the bear's winning, but the bunny suddenly pulls the sad eye move, catching the bear off guard and landing a surprise eye poke. The battle gets wild. The bear tries to body slam the rabbit, then spins it like a Beyblade into the power lines. The rabbit bounces back with spiked gloves and even poisonous gas. Finally, both go in for a left hook, but the bear lands the punch first and knocks the rabbit flat. Suddenly, a wild skeletal T-Rex charges in with a tackle. Kasumi turns around like, what kind of Pokemon is that? And realizes it's Rin with her undead pet. Now it's 2v1. Tanpopo and Rin surround her, but Kasumi busts out her secret move, Surprise Mother Flipper, and grows her bear to colossal titan size. She crushes the bunny and skeleton under 1 foot and accidentally wrecks more buildings than terrorists on 9/11. After that, Kasumi hops off her giant bear and walks over to Honoka, who's been chilling on the ground like it's movie night, wishing he had popcorn. He asks what all of that was about, and she asks him what he thinks. Who does he think has been protecting him all this time when the princess wasn't around? At the mention of Ayaka, Honoka grabs her hands and says they need to go rescue her. But Kasumi rolls her eyes and says that overpowered cow doesn't need saving, only a vacation, and points at Ayaka, who's calmly sitting on the bear's paw reading her book. Ayaka steps down, and Honoka runs to her, thanking her over and over for being safe and fighting the witches. Watching that, Kasumi gets annoyed and says she's the one who deserves a thank you. Then she tells Ayaka that they had agreed Kasumi protects him during weekends and holidays, and Ayaka takes care of him at school and on the bus. But Ayaka broke the deal by taking him out last weekend. While they argue about who gets to guard him, Honoka suddenly realizes something. Everything Kasumi said earlier about getting bullied and not knowing about him and Ayaka was totally made up. She smirks and says teasing him is her job as his little sister. Then she gets serious and tells Ayaka the headmistress warned them over 30 tower witches are now in the city. And even though they haven't made a move yet, it likely means something huge is coming. Meanwhile, we cut to Kazane turning on the TV, only to see half the city leveled from the bear and bunny showdown. She sighs and wonders just how deep in debt she'll have to go to fix all this mess. Back in the city, Ayaka tells Hanoka that maybe she wants to protect him full time, and they should just move in together. Elsewhere, Cronwar is up to something again. She sends her Croco Boy to track down every tower witch in the city and gather them at her base. At the same time, Kazane gets a call from Rothenburg. It's about Medusa. She's escaped. The next day, Ayaka goes to Hanoka and Kasumi's house to ask their mom if she can have permission to keep Hanoka with her 24/7s. To their shock, their mom, Kamachi, instantly agrees and even shares a story from her own school days. She says that back in high school, she became close friends with a strong girl who was known as Dragon Tooth. That girl turned out to be none other than Ayaka's mom, Kazane. The two of them became so close, they wanted to marry each other. But since it wasn't 2023 yet, they had to marry men instead. So they promised to have their future kids marry each other, which means Hanoka and Ayaka were engaged before they were even born. Kasumi refuses to accept this and says she won't let her big brother leave so easily. Kamachi tells her she needs to grow up already, and that all she does is make him do stuff for her all day long. Kasumi says it's her right as his little sister, but when that doesn't work, Kamachi just tackles her to the ground and holds her down, yelling at Hanoka to grab his stuff and run. After that, Ayaka and Hanoka walk out together, and she asks if he's okay living with her alone. He says there's not a guy in the world who wouldn't want that. Then he says the whole thing feels weirdly nostalgic. Ayaka tries to finish his thought, like they met before, a long time ago, but no matter how hard they try, they can't remember when. She says her own memories are fuzzy too, but the one thing she does remember clearly is her mission to protect him with everything she's got. And now, she's starting to believe someone close to their power made this happen, like it was all part of some bigger plan. Soon, her car pulls up and the driver opens the door for them. Hanoka realizes that being the daughter of the headmistress must mean Ayaka is seriously rich. They arrive at her place, or more like her kingdom-sized building. They head inside and are greeted by what feels like 1,000 maids. Ayaka says her room is on one of the upper floors, so they'll take the elevator. As they go up, Hanoka wonders who even lives in a 41-story house. They finally reach her room, but when they open the door, they find 3 maids already inside turned to stone. Standing behind them is Medusa, who says she got tired of waiting. Ayaka steps in and quickly tells Hanoka to stay on the 12th floor. She closes the elevator doors behind her. She transforms into her full flame-wielding battle form and begins fighting Medusa with everything she's got. Meanwhile, Hanoka stands behind the door, confused why Ayaka would send him away, especially when she usually insists he stays close. He figures the enemy must be too strong this time. Then he remembers, if he gets too far from Ayaka, she'll lose her invincibility. So, instead of listening to her, he decides to do what he's best at, completely ignoring instructions. Suddenly, the elevator door melts and Ayaka falls to the ground. She tells Hanoka to grab his broom and run, because in battles like this, he's basically background character material that ends up flattened. But Medusa isn't letting them escape. She casts a curse and turns Ayaka into stone. Hanoka begs her to release Ayaka and says he'll do whatever she wants, but Medusa says she's not foolish like he is. Then Hanoka remembers the candy. He still has the one he brought when they moved in together. He takes it out and swallows it, unlocking the hidden white energy inside him. Right away, a white-haired, vampire-looking woman appears and introduces herself as the White Princess, Evermillion. Medusa charges at her, but Evermillion blasts her straight out of the building along with most of the building itself with just a taste of her power. Meanwhile, Kazane looks out her window, hoping for a peaceful moment after work, just in time to watch her multi-million-dollar building explode into pieces. She sighs and figures Medusa must be behind it, then tells her assistant to gather every witch in town for a full-scale hunt. Back at the scene, Evermillion tells Hanoka that Ayaka was turned to stone because he lost faith in her strength. To undo the curse, he has to believe in her again, basically, give her a true love-style kiss like in Snow White. She then disappears, reminding him not to call her unless it's really important. Right after that, Medusa returns, this time with backup team Tampopo Rocket is back. Hanoka kisses Ayaka, breaking her stone curse, and then clings to her like a cockroach during the wild battle that follows. Ayaka wipes out Team Rocket with one big blast and starts fighting Medusa one-on-one. They go all out, evenly matched. Medusa tries to turn her to stone again, but Ayaka breaks through the spell with the power of fire, feelings, and classic plot armor. As they're fighting mid-air, Hanoka starts feeling sleepy, and yep, you guessed it, he falls asleep hugging Ayaka. Talk about being dead weight. Later that night, he wakes up in the school nurse's office and sees Ayaka sitting beside him. He asks if everything that happened was a dream. She says nope, it was all real. Then she pulls the curtain aside to reveal Medusa and her students lying peacefully in the bed next to theirs. Hanoka freaks out, but Ayaka tells him she'll explain everything later and that they're not enemies anymore. She closes the curtain again, leans in, and kisses him saying she's just returning the favor. Later on, they decide to head back to Hanoka's house since Ayaka's place quite literally got blown to bits. Kasumi heads out for the night after getting summoned by Kazane, while Ayaka and Hanoka meet his mom back home. The next morning, Kasumi comes back after searching for Medusa all night and failing the mission. She decides to check on Hanoka and walks into his room only to find Ayaka sitting on top of him and checking the seal on his chest. She gets mad knowing that her mom actually allowed Ayaka to stay over and starts being rude to her at the breakfast table. Kamachi can't take it and suddenly falls into a deep sulk. Hanoka scolds Kasumi for being disrespectful and tells her to apologize. But it's too late. Kamachi wraps herself up in bed and won't talk to anyone. Hanoka calls her job to report she's sick and won't be coming in, then leaves for school ahead of the others. Back at school, the student council and Ayaka's fan club are holding a meeting. The president is losing her mind. It's been 2 weeks since Hanoka got close to their princess, and no one's done anything about it. She turns to the vice president, but even she refuses to act. She tells the president to calm down because Ayaka said she wouldn't let anyone lay a hand on Hanoka. Not liking that answer, the president turns to their club advisor, science teacher Kaiokairo sensei, and calls him out. She says he only became their advisor because he was too chicken to say no, and that she's done dealing with his uselessness. If he doesn't do something about Hanoka, she'll have the whole council vote to have him fired. Later that morning, Kaiokairo approaches Ayaka and Hanoka and asks to speak with them in the science lab. There, he tells them he's the student council's advisor and that Hanoka has become a problem. He says Hanoka probably doesn't know what Ayaka was like in her first year, since he transferred in late. He explains that every year during the fall festival, students vote for the top student to be the school's role model, the face of Tojisu High. They pick the winner based on appearance, grades, athletic ability, charisma, and overall presence. The winner is crowned prince or princess. He then says the issue is that if strange rumors start spreading about the winner, things get messy, especially when those rumors involve a guy. Hanoka tries to defend Ayaka's reputation, but Kaiokairo says it doesn't matter what their real relationship is, because Ayaka doesn't belong to him, she belongs to the school. He asks Hanoka to kindly step away. Hanoka starts feeling unsure, but Ayaka tells him not to look so down. She explains the tradition comes from an old legend about an angel who once came to Earth and took classes like a regular student, which is why the princess role is so important. Kaiokairo agrees and says the school's hierarchy goes something like this: headmistress, princess, student council, teachers, and then regular student. Ayaka, being the headmistress's daughter, already holds 2 of the highest positions. No one can really tell her what to do, but the problem is, he might get fired by the council. Ayaka says she already has a plan and they just need to speed things up. Kaiokairo says he's relieved to hear that, but says now they need to talk about the real reason he called them there. He pulls out a magical tool and teleports Hanoka and himself into another dimension. He tells him not to panic, then brings out a small orb similar to the magical candy Cranoir gave him. He says it's a weaker version and jokes that the real one probably felt rough going down. Hanoka is shocked he never told anyone about that candy except Ayaka. Kaiokairo explains that Hanoka summoned the White Princess using one of those candies, and that action broke one of the 5 seals holding her in. He says the headmistress may soon become an enemy, even though she was the one who made it possible for him to live a free life in the first place. She only agreed to it under one condition: the 5 seals had to remain untouched. Now that one has broken, the rest will likely fall too, and no one can stop it. The only way out would be to seal Hanoka away using the headmistress's magic. Luckily, she's currently busy dealing with Medusa and doesn't know yet, but it's only a matter of time before she learns the truth about the seals and about Medusa secretly being protected. Kaiokairo says he really just wants to help. If Ayaka weren't involved, he would have taken care of Hanoka as his guardian. He asks Hanoka to leave Ayaka behind and come with him. Hanoka doesn't even hesitate. Just then, Ayaka shatters the dimensional barrier, slams Kaiokairo into the ground with her blade, and pulls Hanoka out. Kaiokairo survives using a classic substitution spell and escapes. Right after, Ayaka takes Hanoka to the school's speaker room and has him make an announcement for all students to gather in the gym. Once everyone arrives, she walks up to the stage and for the first time ever shows actual interest in school politics. She gives a bold speech about how much she cares about the school's future and then says she's removing the current student council president, her new handpicked president, none other than Hanoka. Ayaka then names herself the new vice president and gives the old vice president the downgraded title of vice president. Later, Hanoka stands in front of the student council and gives a short speech. He admits that he knows most of them don't like him right now, but he promises to earn their respect over time and hopes they'll accept him for real. Meanwhile, Kasumi is not having it. She's done watching Ayaka steal her brother, so she decides to take Hanoka back by force. She builds an over-the-top trap and follows them after school. When the two walk into a toy store and Hanoka steps outside for air, she strikes kidnapping him with her giant bear, throwing a car at Ayaka and knocking her out with sleep injections. Then, she attaches airplane wings to the bear using pieces of their house and takes off toward the woods. She says they'll live there alone, just the two of them. She tells him she overheard the teacher's warning. The headmistress will turn on him and her daughter probably will too. Just then, a giant shadow appears above them. They look up to see a massive dragon swooping down, ridden by none other than Ayaka. She's done playing side character and goes full action hero, launching fire spells from above. Kasumi tries to dodge, but it causes half the city to explode. Eventually, the bear crashes into a building, and everyone falls. Ayaka jumps down and saves them all, catching them and softening the fall. She brings them back home and puts them to bed. That night, Hanoka wakes up and apologizes for his sister's actions. Ayaka shrugs it off, saying all Kasumi did was throw a car and knock her out with a few words. She actually respects her for being such a protective sibling. Then she playfully asks if he'd like her to act like a little sister too. Hanoka laughs and says she'd be more like his older sister. They goof around all night with the idea until Ayaka gets bored and falls asleep. Hanoka lets her rest in his bed, then looks at the toys he bought for both her and Kasumi, sadly noticing they were destroyed during the fight. Meanwhile, Komachi picks up her phone to hear Kazane's voice. She's coming over to talk with Ayaka and her son. The next morning, Kazane arrives and goes shopping with Komachi and Kasumi. Ayaka wakes up early and makes breakfast for Hanoka. He wakes to the smell of food and sees her in the kitchen. He quietly admires how beautiful she looks and joins her for breakfast. Meanwhile, Tanpopo and her group who are living with Medusa at Hanoka's place now plot to capture him. They ask Medusa why she's suddenly following Ayaka's orders. Medusa says they lost fair and square, and by the rules, they must obey the winner. As long as their goals line up, she has no reason to act yet. But if the others still want to try something, they're welcome to take their shot when Ayaka isn't around. So they sneak upstairs and wait outside Hanoka's room, hoping Ayaka will leave. But surprised, she stays awake by his side all night and only leaves to make breakfast. Apparently, she doesn't need sleep like normal people, just another op skill of hers. Later, in the living room, Hanoka and Ayaka talk about their moms, then head out to get the laundry when it starts raining. At that moment, Kazane and the others return. Ayaka steps out to greet them while Hanoka goes to dry off in the bathroom, only to walk in and run into Mei and the others. They accuse him of being a perv and drag him into the main hall. Everyone sees them, and Kazane reacts quickly. She knocks out Komachi and Kasumi, then turns to Ayaka and says it's time to capture them and find out where Medusa is hiding. Ayaka and Hanoka summon their brooms, but instead of flying away, Ayaka spins around and clashes with her mom. Kazane tells Hanoka to make her stop being stubborn, but Hanoka remembers what Kaiokairo said Ayaka was really hiding Medusa all along. Still, he decides to trust her and says they can't let themselves be caught. Ayaka agrees and calls out to Medusa to activate their agreement now. Medusa appears, bites Ayaka, and the two fuse together. Hanoka faints and sees a vision of what really happened when Medusa first attacked. They made a contract. Medusa would give her powers to Ayaka, and in return, Ayaka would protect her and her students until the time was right. But Kazane doesn't understand why they fused and starts yelling nonsense. Medusa mocks her, and the fight begins. Kazane swings her broom. Ayaka blocks and tries to turn her to stone. But Kazane grabs her by the collar and slams her down. Ayaka still manages to turn her to stone and walks away, apologizing. Suddenly, Kazane breaks free from the stone spell with pure willpower, kicks Ayaka from behind, and grabs her again. She tells her this isn't enough to stop her and points out that Ayaka is out of breath already. She explains it's because her invincibility was tied to Evermillion, and by merging with Medusa, who is considered impure, she lost that power. Then she tells her to brace for a beatdown. But Hanoka uses his magic to switch places with Ayaka and takes the hit himself. Later, he wakes up tied in a cell with Ayaka. She tries to melt the bars but fails. She tells him they're inside one of her mother's punishment rooms and that her fusion with Medusa has ended. That's a huge problem. Medusa is probably being interrogated right now, and everything could be exposed. She tells him that her mother once said, as long as the seals stay unbroken, Hanoka would be safe at school. But now that they're coming undone, he's officially a threat. Their only option now? Beat her mom in a fight. She says Kazane actually has a strong sense of honor. If they defeat her fairly, she'll listen to reason. Hanoka thinks about how badly they got wrecked earlier and wonders how that's going to happen. But Ayaka says there's still one chance. It all depends on his power. Meanwhile, back at school, Kazane is playing shogi with Kronwar. Kronwar casually asks about Medusa. Kazane sighs and says she was excited to interrogate her. But then some witches from Rothenburg showed up with official orders and took Medusa into custody. As she sips her tea and sulks over the missed torture session, her school building explodes. She looks outside and sees Ayaka and Hanoka standing on the rubble. She flies out and yells at Ayaka again for destroying another building. Ayaka just raises her sword and says she will defeat her. Kazane asks why Ayaka's trying to fight her and tells her to quit messing around, put her uniform on, and get her butt off the rubble. She scolds both of them for breaking out of prison and says they're going home and tomorrow they're cleaning up the mess. Ayaka and Hanoka walk away, relieved that she didn't figure out anything about the seals. They agree that if things end well, maybe that's all that matters. That night, Hanoka and Ayaka sleep in the same bed, but don't worry, nothing happens. Because they're close, Hanoka has a weird dream that shows memories from Ayaka's past. He sees the time when Kazane brought in the daughters of two witches to become Ayaka's friends and help her fit in. Those two would later become her first loyal fans and the third seat and vice president of the student council. Kenny and Toko become close with Ayaka and notice that even though she struggles socially, she's amazing at everything else: charm, grades, and sports. Over time, they start admiring her so much that they form a full-blown fan club that eventually leads to Ayaka becoming the school's official princess. But one day, Ayaka sees Hanoka walking past her with his sister, and something sparks inside her. That's the moment she went to her mom and said she found the person she was meant to protect. And that's how Ayaka started her journey as Hanoka's guardian. The next morning, Kasumi wakes up, wanders into the kitchen, and tries to remember what even happened yesterday. She opens the door and sees the dining table full of Team Tanpopo Rocket. Turns out Kazane let them go. She only cared about Medusa, and since they had nowhere else to go, they just moved in. Kasumi is not happy. After getting ready, she heads to Hanoka's room to wake him up, and once again finds Ayaka on top of him, this time dressed like a nurse, saying she's checking his seal. After breakfast, everyone walks to school. It feels like things are back to normal. Hanoka's locker is full of hate mail and letters asking him to quit the student council, and as usual, he's messing up answers in class even though he's trying. At lunch, Hanoka and Ayaka head to the cafeteria. Suddenly, they hear glass breaking and rush downstairs to find students trashing the school. Chaos breaks out: motorbikes in the halls, students selling cigarettes. It's a full-blown rebellion. Hanoka asks what's going on, and Ayaka says it looks like an uprising. Tanpopo says it's his fault as student council president. Then, they see Toko shoved to the ground by a girl named Rinon. She hands Hanoka a note demanding that he come to the gym alone at 2:30 p.m. The tone of the letter definitely doesn't sound friendly. Toko explains that during her night patrol, she saw the former student council president at a bar with Rinon. She claimed Hanoka stole her position and is now ruling the school like a dictator. Ayaka tells Toko to meet her after school. Later, in gym class, she tells Hanoka the truth. Rinon is one of the 5 elite witches who patrol the school. They call her the Bear Killer. Apparently, a tiger named Lucky Bear escaped the zoo once, and she stopped it with her bare hands. She was suspended 2 months ago for causing trouble. At lunch, Hanoka says he figures the headmistress must be furious about all the damage, but Tanpopo says she's actually out of town. Kronwar is in charge for now, and she clearly doesn't care what happens to the school. At 2:30 p.m., Hanoka heads to the gym alone, armed with advice from Ayaka on how Rinon fight. When he arrives, he sees the gym transformed into a fighting ring, packed with students cheering. Hanoka tries to talk his way out, but Rinon says he wronged her best friend and ruined her image. Then she punches him hard in the face and knocks him down. Hanoka gets back up, but Rinon says she's going to teach him a lesson in front of everyone. She lands punch after punch, knocking him down again. Then she grabs his tie and prepares to land her signature final blow. But that's when Hanoka turns the tables. He's been waiting for this moment thanks to Ayaka's prep work. He boosts his stats with magic, knocks Rinon down, and pins her. He gets ready to punch her but stops himself because it's still 2014 and chivalry matters. Just then, the lights cut out. Ayaka and Team Tampopo drop in. Rinon punches out the witches easily, but Ayaka knocks her out cold with one hit. Then, they lift Hanoka into a victory pose while wearing cloaks to hide their identities. The lights come back on, and it looks like he defeated Rinon. It's later revealed that Ayaka and the former president planned all this a week ago. If the former president helped with the setup, she'd get her spot back. She got a little too into the role and made Rinon way angrier than planned, but in the end, it worked. Now, Hanoka's the hero who beat the bear killer. His name is trending online, and YouTubers everywhere are reacting to his fight. It's a huge win for Hanoka as student council president. A few days later, Ayaka takes Hanoka to the top of a tall building and says it's time to train him in magic combat. Hanoka's confused. She always said it was too dangerous. She says she knows he's been practicing in secret and hiding things from her, and she doesn't like that. She summons a fire familiar and tells him to fight it with his magic. The familiar blasts fire at him, knocking him onto his butt. Ayaka tells him to summon his own familiar, but Hanoka just stares at her like, "What?" and asks how. The familiar attacks again, and Hanoka injures his elbow. Ayaka quickly runs to help him, but Hanoka stands up and pushes her back. He tells her to be a tough teacher if he's going to learn anything. Ayaka stares at him for a second, then picks him up and throws him off the building. She tells him to summon a flying familiar or enjoy the fall, and just like that, Hanoka realizes he really messed up. As Hanoka falls, the fire familiar chases after him and Ayaka follows close behind on her broom. While falling, Hanoka tries to think of the one thing most important to him, something he could summon. Just before hitting the ground, his brain lands on the memory of Ayaka in her swimsuit and nurse outfit, and somehow, that's enough to summon a giant magical avatar Ayaka in full nurse gear. Truly, a man of culture. The giant Ayaka avatar punches a building in front of them, which accidentally knocks down a wall and exposes Kaiokairo sensei having tea with Cronwar. Cronwar calmly comments that this was some serious magic, and that Hanoka couldn't have used it without breaking the second seal. She also asks where Kazane went, saying she's bored without her. Meanwhile, Hanoka passes out from using too much magic, and Ayaka takes him home to rest. Elsewhere, Kazane is deep underground, examining a strange exploding rune and a hidden tunnel. She's approached by Rinon, who says Toko told her where to find her. Rinon asks what she's doing there, and Kazane listens as Rinon says a witch calling herself the Messenger of the Tower appeared and said everyone in the city is now a hostage. A week later, while Kazane is still missing, Ayaka and Hanoka head to school for exams. Meanwhile, Kazane finally meets the witch. Her name is Weekend. Kazane tells her she knows about the bombs and assumes she's here to bargain for Hanoka. Weekend nods but says she isn't here to make a deal. She starts explaining how witch battles work. Usually, witches can only fight each other but can't harm civilians. That's because of a huge protective barrier that Kazane placed over the entire town. When anyone gets hurt, Kazane's magic activates and protects them. Thanks to her massive mana pool and fast recovery, she can keep the shield up forever. But then Weekend asks, what would happen if the entire city exploded all at once? Even with all that mana, protecting everyone might finally drain Kazane, and once she's down, Weekend will have time to go after Hanoka. Right after saying that, she sets off rune bombs hidden all over the city. The explosions level everything but the barrier saves the civilians. Still, Kazane collapses from the magic overload. Weekend reveals that she was behind tricking Medusa and Cronwar too. With Kazane out of the way, she has her team carry her off and lock her in a cell. Weekend says it'll take a week for her magic to return, plenty of time to play with the students. Back at school, Ayaka sees the explosions and grabs Hanoka, taking him to the witch's underground workshop. Down there, they meet Kasumi, who runs over and hugs her brother. They're greeted by Toko, Rinon, and a few other witches tasked with defending the school, including their leader, Natsume, and a cat girl named Atori. Hanoka asks what's going on, and they promise to explain, but then Natsume suddenly pulls out a gun and uses American gun style, sleeping bullets. She shoots Hanoka to put Ayaka to sleep. Kasumi tries to step in, but Rinon knocks her out cold. They say Hanoka needs to be sealed away until they know what the enemy's goal is and where Kazane is. Hanoka surprisingly agrees to go with them and follows them to a secure confinement room along with Ayaka. While inside, he notices the ceiling is weirdly high and has an open skylight. He tries to fly up using his broom, but his magic doesn't work. Just then, Ayaka wakes up and says she messed up and that her mom must have lost. Suddenly, a toy drops from the skylight and lands in front of them. It activates and shows a hologram of Weekend. who says she's finally found Hanoka and will be coming to claim her new pet. After seeing her face, Ayaka blows up the toy, destroying the wall behind them. She tells Hanoka they're escaping. Magic doesn't work right now because the city is in ruins, but they'll find another way. They take a 2-hour-long staircase that leads them to a mountain outside the town. But when they finally reach the surface, they're greeted by a horrible sight. The entire town is destroyed and on fire. Hanoka panics and blames himself. He says his mom and everyone else must be gone, and it's all his fault because the enemy was after him. But Ayaka stays calm and tells him to stop. She explains that no one died. When a workshop is created, the leader makes a contract with the heart of the city. That contract allows the city to protect civilians by using the witch's magic to repair itself. Since the city is destroyed and the contractor Kazane is gone, no workshop witch can use magic. That's why their first mission is to reach the center of the city and make Hanoka the new contractor so the witches can fight again. Meanwhile, Natsume and the others analyze the situation. All the civilians were safely evacuated and put to sleep. Kazane is missing and likely captured. With no contractor, no witch can use magic, and it'll take days before help arrives from headquarters. At the same time, several workshop witches are still missing after the blast. Just then, one of them bursts into the room strapped with time bombs. She says Weekend has captured a bunch of witches and is using them as hostages to demand Hanoka. If they don't hand him over in 30 minutes, everything's going boom. Meanwhile, Kasumi teams up with Tanpopo and her gang to keep an eye on Weekend, who's standing on school grounds surrounded by the captured witches wearing bombs. Tanpopo asks Kasumi what she wants them to do. Kasumi says that right now, they're the only ones who can still use magic and they better start earning their stay at her house. Back in the tunnel toward the city's heart, Ayaka and Hanoka keep moving until one of Weekend's allies, Gibraltar, appears. She uses magic to summon a massive stone golem and slams both of them into the ground. Gibraltar grabs Ayaka and tries to land the final hit, but Ayaka flips up and kicks her straight in the face. Gibraltar laughs, thinking a regular kick won't hurt her armored body. But she's wrong. Ayaka was trained in martial arts by her mom and doesn't need magic to wreck someone. She beats Gibraltar down and keeps going. Back at the underground workshop base, Natsume tries to defuse the bombs herself, but when the clock hits 18 minutes, they decide to face Weekend directly. At the same time, Cronnoir wakes up and sees the town is in ruins. Her partner tells her that Weekend is the one who leaked info about Hanoka. Cronnoir realizes this means Weekend beat Kazane, and there's no way she'll let someone that strong walk away without a fight. Natsume and the others confront Weekend and tell her to give up, but Weekend just smiles and says there are less than 12 minutes left if they want to live. They should hand Hanoka over. She admits she's not strong herself, but even if they beat her, they won't be able to stop the bombs. Kasumi starts to wonder if Weekend isn't the one controlling the bombs at all, and if someone else is the real threat. She takes off to search the building for Weekend's partner. Back in the tunnel, Hanoka reaches the heart of the city and follows Ayaka's steps to make the new contract. Time is almost up. Rinan and the others charge at Weekend, and at that moment, they feel their magic return. Hanoka has finished the contract. With magic back, they disable all the bombs and take down Weekend. They lock her up in a magic ceiling cell, but she surprises them by using physical grenades to escape. She blows the whole place up, wearing iron armor under her clothes to survive. Then she meets with her partner and sets off the last wave of bombs, taking out more workshop witches. She taunts Hanoka through his contract link, daring him to come save them. Hanoka tries to get up and help, but Ayaka headbutts him and says she'll handle it herself. Elsewhere, Kasumi and her team track down Weekend's partner and engage in battle. He has copy magic, which lets him use his opponent's powers. What follows is a Titan-style fight. Kasumi's giant pink bear mech versus his dark version. They smash into each other in an epic showdown. Kasumi looks like she's winning until the fight causes part of the school to collapse, with Tanpopo and her gang still inside. Kasumi uses her bear to save them, but the enemy takes advantage and knocks her down. It looks bad until Medusa appears in her human form, turns the enemy to stone, and tells her students she'll punish them later for doing such a bad job. She runs off, chased by Rothenburg witches. Back in the nurse's office, Atori shows up to check on Hanoka. Ayaka tells her he's got a high fever because of the stress of forming the contract. Atori says her mission's done and gives Ayaka an update. Cronnoir is now hunting tower witches. She also tells Ayaka to stop worrying about Hanoka so much. Ayaka thanks her and asks her to watch over him while she goes to take down Weekend once and for all. She grabs her sword and flies off to the church where Weekend is hiding. Ayaka wastes no time and launches herself at Weekend, but gets thrown back by an explosion midair. Weekend says she doesn't have broken abilities like Ayaka or Kazane. That's why she spent years planting bombs all around the city. Now the place is filled with traps. Ayaka doesn't stand a chance. They continue fighting. Weekend brings down the roof with an explosion, hitting Ayaka. But Ayaka rises from the rubble, her fire magic now fully activated. The fight continues and Ayaka manages to beat Weekend in close combat. But right as she's about to relax, she's hit by another explosion and blasted to the door. Weekend reveals she has giant mana-powered dolls and sends them all to attack Ayaka. Meanwhile, at the school, Honoka and Kaiokairo are attacked by another one of Weekend's allies. Kaiokairo uses his magic to send Honoka back to the real world. He wakes up and asks Atori about Ayaka, but she tells him to rest due to his fever. Just then, she gets a call from Kaiokairo. He says Weekend has planted a huge bomb in this dream realm, and if they don't stop her, everyone who was evacuated will die. Atori carries Honoka to Ayaka's location, and they arrive just in time to see her lying on the floor, defeated. Honoka grabs her and tells her what's going on and that they need to defeat Weekend. He gives her permission to use his powers and Ayaka does just that. She completely wrecks Weekend, no holding back. She demands to know where the bomb switch is. Weekend grins and says it's too late and activates the bomb. As everyone starts dying, Honoka stands up and tries to call on Evermillion again. Ayaka tries to stop him, but he passes out. In his dream, he meets Evermillion again. She says he's back way too soon, and he shouldn't keep relying on her. She knows why he's here. He wants to bring back everyone and everything that was destroyed. She says she can do that, but such a big wish comes with a cost. When he asks what she wants in return, she says, his life. But she reminds him that if he dies, their contract will also take Ayaka's life. He hesitates, then agrees. He says there's no other way. They form a contract, and he uses Evermillion's full power. Suddenly, the entire city comes back. All the people are alive, and everything is restored like the bombs never exploded. Ayaka hugs him, but Honoka apologizes for sacrificing his life and hers. She refuses to let that happen. She stands up and yells out to Evermillion, offering her own life instead. Her magical powers vanish, and she collapses. Honoka survives, but before he can even cry, Weekend suddenly stabs him in the back. She tells him he ruined everything, and that now all she has left is a knife. She says she'll send him to the afterlife to be with Ayaka, but Honoka grabs the blade, yanks it out, and punches her to the ground. Then, he gets on top of her, slams the knife into the floor beside her, and says he's done watching people suffer. No matter how many times she tries to ruin his life, he'll stop her every time. He falls unconscious from the wound. Weekend looks at him, sighs, and tells her partner to patch him up. She says they've got a few days left before Kazane returns anyway. As they leave, they run into Cronnoir and her crocodile partner, who take her in for a walk. Back at the school, everyone's okay, but Honoka is sobbing beside Ayaka's lifeless body. Atori enters and gets a call from Kaiokairo, who says the mission was a success. But Honoka's too heartbroken to care. He tells them everything that happened. Kaiokairo realizes something doesn't add up. Ayaka shouldn't have been able to trade her life for his. Only the contractor can make that kind of deal. Honoka then notices her body is still warm, even though she isn't breathing. He gets an idea. He tells Atori to draw a magic circle and place Ayaka inside. He says he thinks Ayaka forcefully broke their contract and to bring her back, he needs to create a new one. He cuts his hand and drops some blood on her chest, then hesitates. Instead of kissing her lips, he kisses her forehead. After a moment, Ayaka gasps and comes back to life. Later, in his dream realm, Honoka and Kaiokairo meet Evermillion again. She explains that years ago, Ayaka made a separate contract with her. If Honoka ever died or needed help, Ayaka would give up her contract with Evermillion, allowing him to use his own power instead. So, when Ayaka ended the contract, Honoka used only his power to restore the city. That meant her deal with Evermillion was cancelled. Meanwhile, Cronnoir challenges Weekend to a one-on-one duel and totally destroys her like a side character facing the main hero in a tournament arc. She's disappointed that Weekend was so weak and thinks about torturing her just for wasting her time. But just then, Kazane shows up and says she wants Weekend for punishment. Weekend is shocked. She thought Kazane would still be out of magic for days. Cronnoir says nope, it only took her 20 hours to recharge. When asked why she didn't show up earlier, Kazane says she wanted the kids to handle things for once. Now it's her turn to clean up their mess. Kazane and Cronnoir fight over who gets to punish Weekend. It's an epic battle between the two strongest witches. It only lasts a few minutes, and Kazane, as usual, wins. It only lasts a few minutes, and Kazane, as usual, wins. The next morning, Honoka wakes up in his room. Ayaka greets him and says it's time for school. On their way, Hanoka asks if she's okay. She says it'll take time for her magic to recover, but she's fine without it. Suddenly, they're ambushed by Team Tenpopo Rocket again. They tried their usual capture Hanoka move, but Ayaka, even without magic, proves she's still the queen. She grabs Tenpopo and Mei by the head and nearly crushes them. They quickly apologize, and everything goes back to normal. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.